It's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna be a good one.
Definitely a different type of process.
Cut down or freeze up.
Being a coach's son.
Jackson, of course, they keep retooling. One stone to face, a hit by pitch. Oh my goodness. Hello everyone, welcome inside the cafeteria, there we go, at Blue Springs High School. Coach Tim McElligot set us up here. We're talking to head coaches from Liberty High School, Kirk Bragg. Thanks for joining us, Coach.
Mm-hmm.
And Lee Summit West, Coach Jay Meyer. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
We're here today to just talk some baseball. I always love to, when we get over here, we did this last year. Coach Siegel set up. Coach McElligot was part of that. Coach Bragg, we got a new face here, and Coach Meyer. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I always like to get perspective from coaches because I think the baseball community and what we see across the landscape, there's always comments, people have opinions, this, that, but I always like to hear from head coaches of high school baseball teams because you guys get everything filtered up from everything here, and then how much does it filter back down and then back up? Where are the changes? What's good, what's not? What's the landscape and how it's shaping high school baseball as we move forward? And one of the things I kind of mentioned to Coach Meyer at the beginning of this, youth baseball, I think, I know it's all youth baseball. High school kids are youth to me. I mean, I'm old. But elementary, middle school, where kids, 8 to 14, they're coming up through the ranks and whatnot. When we're talking about as they get to high school baseball, the talent level to me has seemed to have gotten much better over, say, the last 10 years. When I look back at 2015, 2013 through that range, you have a handful of kids that are going D1, Big 12 at the time, to today when you look around. You're seeing the landscape of players at a much larger scale. You look down, whether it's D1, whether it's, mid-majors, Wichita State, Missouri State, those types of things. Evansville's been plucking a lot of kids out of St. Louis area to the SEC. And last year with the 2 draft picks in Trey Schneider and Titus Sissel, 2 in that 1 year, I think that's pretty impressive. Do you think that, what do you guys attributed that to? Do you think that the level of development has gotten better, or how do we see that today? I'll start with you, Coach.
Baseball's always been really good in Kansas City, but especially the last 3 or 4 years, it has been, we see it on a daily basis every time we play, where, the talent level, I think this best has been since I've been doing this. And we've all got, probably 30 years in between us, each of us, and I'll let them speak. But, you go play these guys, they've got 1-2 dudes or, on the mound or 1-2 guys in the field at that level. I think it's gotten to the point that, what the summer programs are doing, they're playing that high level competition. And anymore, what are you doing in the summer? What are you doing on your own? It's not just practicing with us or, for us in a weight class. What are you doing outside of that? And we had the Gibbler kid last year. What he did on his own, you've never seen. And I think it starts there. And I think that, the way that these summer programs are going and playing all the time and playing that high level competition, I think that, they just keep getting better by doing that.
Just to add a little bit on that, you're talking about what's kind of the big difference. I think a lot of it now with just the evolution of the game, the physicality part of it, the kids are getting better skill set at a younger age when there's reps in that 10 to 13, 14 age, how they're just exploding because they're getting good quality reps. But more importantly, they're also understanding the importance of the physicality, the training, whether it be with a strength coach or a strength program, that. So I think you're seeing that physical part I don't necessarily maybe think there's a large of overall talent, but we're bringing up that bar better. So then it's harder to sift through that, and you really got to, and that's the part of, you know, the watching, the developmental part of it. You know, you're seeing, you know, big, strong kids, you know, increased velocity, spin ratio, you know, catchers, the physical part of it, hitters, you know, just, you know, strength wise. So that draws that attention for that projectability. But I still just think a little bit is that still that big development, that playing on a high caliber, and a lot of times these guys are all still out there, but they're spread out.
Yeah.
And then they go and they play in tournaments and so on, which are great, but it's because it's so spread out. Sometimes it can be not as effective as then all of a sudden, bam, you play Liberty, you play Staley, you play Blue South, you play Blue Spring, and those ones and the Gibblers and the guys like that are now 2 and 3 are all in the same squad.
Sure.
And you got a staff, and then you've got 3, and then all of a sudden, you know, the game speeds up. And it's not that they can't handle. I think sometimes they get a little overwhelmed because everybody's now concentrated at 6A or at us, you know, and I'm seeing that a little bit. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that kind of makes sense. A little bit.
No, and I'll just say with the so back before there was only like building champions and a couple others. I think now you got Team KC, you got building champions. They have like 2 or 3 teams. Impact, they all play each other, so all the high school guys are playing high school guys now instead of maybe just playing at like a lower level.
Right.
And so then they go to a tournament. Well, they all see each other. So then they saw each other in high school, and they're playing. I'm sure the costs are pretty high because I think they are to get 5 games in. But before you'd only get like maybe 3. So now you got a couple extra games added onto that. You're playing Team KC. You're playing building champions. You're playing all these teams from across Missouri. That all these kids play high school baseball together. So they're all kind of mingled in. Instead of before it'd be like, oh, where are you going? We're going to Lake Point once. Oh, well, we can't afford to go to Lake Point. But now everybody's going to all these big tournaments. So I think that's helped. So I got to give summer programs credit for that. Is that I think even though it's, to me, a little expensive
Right.
to play baseball,
I understand.
but they're all now kind of in a commonality of like, you know, if Impact or, you know, and we got so many now.
Right.
I don't even know. I'm losing track.
McElligott, you got over there, and
What's EA? I mean, there's a bunch of them.
Oh yeah.
But
you
but
got
they all,
Inside
yeah.
Edge.
Outside edge.
Yeah.
Right. So if our kids didn't have a chance to maybe make building champions, they're still going to go maybe inside edge or something else, and they're still going to play each other. So where before you would,
Do you think that, you know, because of this, because before, you know, you'd have this kid that, say, would play on a Jerry Daniels prospect team, right? But then everybody else, they're getting some more development, a little extra than maybe. Do you think it's brought those kids that are in the middle of the pack, maybe not quite as physical, but yet they're getting that same level of training, and it's helping them, and it helps the overall progress of the
Yeah.
team,
absolutely,
Raising that bar, yeah.
absolutely.
Not the biggest separation factor, I guess.
right? Because you got to have, before you might have that one big arm or that one big bat, but then who fills in? You know, if you got 2 or 3 that goes, as it used to be able to carry, but high school baseball at this point, how deep is your lineup? And I think that becomes, you know, from what we've seen, because you're dealing with a guy on the mound, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys on the mound in Class 6, depending upon, you know, where you're at in the development. You know, you might have a couple kids that aren't quite there yet, but I mean, that's the way it looks to me.
No,
Is that correct?
yeah, it's almost twofold at the opportunities of seeing higher level baseball, even though maybe you're not, or you think you're not. You're seeing good baseball, which I think brings it all together. And the fall too. You can't discount the fall. I mean, they're getting 3 seasons where,
Right.
or most of the kids are,
Right.
if they're not playing the sport.
Are there more kids specializing in baseball in the bigger schools like this, or do you still seeing a lot of guys, you know, coach, that are playing football, basketball, baseball, even in a big setting like this?
We've only had the Stevenson kid played all 3. We get all baseball kids anymore, where they're playing in the fall. You know, they're doing their own training. We might get a football kid here and there, but for us, it's been pretty much all baseball for the last 6, 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't had a 3-sporter since the Monte Harrison era and stuff, but yeah, usually 80% of them are just one sport, and a couple, you know, guys are football guys. I've at West, I've seen that always have some, you know, dual sport guys. that excel in football and then also play baseball. So, but yeah, that trend is specializing, and it's been going that way for probably 10 years at least.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
I've had a pretty heavy run of football and basketball kids the last 2 or 3 years. In fact, our probably was our second best player this year. Isaiah Hung, he went and left early to go to play football at Washington State. So he'd have been our 3-hole hitter. He'd have been our number 2 arm, and he would have played outfield, and he was really good. And I've run into that this year. I've got a couple players that are football guys, and so like I got to be careful to allow them to go on to some visits and visit schools around the baseball schedule. So I've been flexible with that. And I had 6 basketball players that played that didn't show up until, at post tryout, pretty honest. And so I knew those 6 would probably have a great opportunity to make the team. So we're dealing with that cycle where before I was maybe in this cycle where I didn't have a lot of multi-sport kids. But with football, it's kind of hard to argue with the NIL the way that stuff is. So those kids can, if those kids can get set that way, I mean, I can't argue with them. I mean, that's a future dream of theirs. So, I mean, I got a lot.
Washington State, I mean, geez.
Yeah, so I'm running into that cycle a little bit, but I don't know if that'll last. But
Now, are all 3 of your guys' schools about the same as far as population?
I think so.
You would be probably the smallest, but not by much.
no, I mean,
Or I should say enrollment is probably
it's close.
Yeah.
I would say it's close, but not. I mean, these guys probably have about 400 to 500 more students than we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're that much bigger?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
2000.
Because
That's why I wonder why I'm still here. 2 big dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're just landlocked right now. Everything's going north of us, so we're
Right. So give us your impressions of the season so far, guys, coming through, starting. You've all kind of different I think you're all 3 pretty talented teams. I know, Coach, you lost a lot last year, but you've been playing some good baseball. Talk to us a little bit about your season so far.
I mean, it's basically a carbon copy of every year. We got to try to figure out. We're learning who we are, and I usually have about a 10-game set on figuring out what do we got. Like, and we're still doing that. We're still mixing lineups and things. Yeah, we've had some opportunities where, we do a lot of system stuff, and it's come in a little bit earlier than some years. Where some years it won't. So we've won some games, close games, with that maybe.
Sure.
But usually that, and then when we hit 10 to 20, that's kind of like we didn't know who we are by that point. And then once about 20 all the way to the end, we better be who we are. So we're in that learning who we are phase. But I mean, it's been an interesting year for us just because missing some of those pieces that we should have.
Sure.
And we had a couple kids that I think would have made the team that didn't go out. So we're like, do we have the full 100% baseball environment with us? And so we've had to kind of push some younger guys up a little bit to see if they can battle through that. But I mean, it's baseball, that little white ball, man.
I think that's a tough thing too when I think people don't quite understand. You made mention of the physicality of varsity baseball. And I think especially you see it at Class 6 across this state. I mean, that to me is, I think, the biggest thing that I see different across the board is just the level of the physicality played, especially at Class 6. These kids are big, strong, fast, and you start to try and put a freshman or a sophomore in that situation, and sometimes they just can't compete physically at that level, correct?
In reps.
Yeah.
In reps. I mean, a senior's seen what? How many more balls thrown at them?
Right.
And plus they're 18.
Right.
And the game's set up to make you fail anyway. So, so then you deal with that other part of, wow, I'm really overwhelmed here.
Yeah.
And it's trying to play catch up, and you're patient, but you just talk them way through it. But it's such a fast pace. I mean, 2 weeks we hit the ground not walking, we hit the ground running, all of us, and bam, boom, 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 boom. We're all playing 4 and 5 days a week, and trying to get practice. We're all talking, he's got practice today, I've got practice today, So, yeah. So, I mean, it's just trying to keep, what do we see? What do we need to work on? Like you said, the pieces of the puzzle is the key thing. Well, same thing, 10, 12 games. I mean, we already were trying a lot of new lineups against, just to find the right missing pieces and adjust some things. So,
Yeah. So we're still in spring training.
yeah, I would say so.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's us. I mean, when you lose pretty much everybody, I mean, we're still figuring out who we are. And, he's winning the close games because of, a little bit more experience. We've lost those games.
Right.
And the thing with our kids is, they understand, they're not last year. And, they come out and it's almost a learning process almost every inning. Something happens that we haven't had to deal with the last couple of years that this new person does. And, and like I said, it might be longer than 10 games for us, but the same, you get those first 10, where are we at? We might have to take this another, 7, 8, 9 for us, and it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And, it's been a different year, for us, just because you've had the same 7, 8 guys for 3, 4 years that have done it. So now you don't have that.
You're like,
So,
oh man, I gotta go back and coach.
yeah, it's been interesting.
They see the name of the school and they're like, oh, they're 25, 26, 20. I'm like, okay. And then you don't bring back, and you only have 1 or 2 key elements, and you got to find a new pitching staff and roles for those pitching staffs and a whole new middle infield and and yeah, so you don't see that. And,
And that to me, when you're, I think especially when you're starting to talk about pitching and you're rolling over a whole new pitching staff, and you've got to put kids out there to learn how to get outs. In the level of play that I've seen especially in the KC Suburban Conference, just especially over the last 5 years, how difficult is it to just to get up and go through the lineup once in this conference?
It's hard.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you guys, so how do you put a freshman on the mound? Can you? How
We
do you
do.
put a sophomore on the
2
mound?
of them.
2 of them?
Yeah. We put 2 of them on the mound.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Is it over? How do they, and what's the thought process there? Are they able to, and how do you help coach them through that?
Well, luckily, I mean, they're not your normal freshmen. I mean, they've played at a high level coming in, and
Sure.
and we have to kind of, give a little more attention to if something happens. I mean, we had one guy, one of our freshmen gave up one on Friday that is probably still going. And it just kind of shook it off. I mean, his mentality for being a freshman is a little different.
That's
It wasn't, he didn't hang his head, but you just kind of have to talk to him a little bit more.
Because I've seen seniors give up a home run like that and fall apart.
Yeah, no, this kid, believe it or not, I mean, when I say going, it's still going. And he didn't, just kind of shook it off, and came in the dugout and was fine. And he's going to be really good down the road, but we have to have him now, because we don't have that guy that can go 70, 80, 90 pitches like we used to.
Right.
We got guys that can go, and I'm going to, I play him tomorrow. He knows, we got 40, 50.
He's not hearing nothing.
No,
No secrets.
We talk all the time.
we
and,
get tired.
I mean, you got to line up
My
to play.
phone calls because he's,
Yeah, so you look at it going,
Almost
damn.
3 of them a day.
I didn't understand. I'm talking baseball with this guy. You're talking to Tony on the other side.
Oh, come on.
It is, man.
Come on.
Now, you guys have all dealt with a high-level pitcher. It's been a few years. Carson Milbrandt came through there. I remember because that was the first time I saw your program.
Yeah.
We were at the state championships covering that with West and whatnot. And I think that's a different mentality because I remember West started to get on a little bit of roll. You guys got out to a big lead. West starts coming back, and boom, he's like, enough of this. Here comes Carson. It was just like this iron curtain that drops, and it was over. And that's a different, I see that. That still sticks in my mind. I remember that because it was like, wow, this kid is different.
Yeah.
So you have those guys. You got Tyler Wood this year. Last year you had Cole Gibbler. What is that like to go through a season like that, and having to deal with some of the distractions that go along with that? Who wants to start? You say you did it the first, so we'll start down there with you.
Okay, well, with Milbrandt?
Yeah.
Well, Carson he was one of those pitchers, just like most of those high-level pitchers, that none of that bothered him.
Yeah.
Because he's desensitized himself from any of the scouting stuff or any of those situations. He could bounce back really good. And we were heavy that was the early stages of heavy arm care. So we were big into bounce back in arms and taking care of arms. And he was just focused on trying to make sure that he was ready for his starts. Now, we did him about every 6-7 days. So we only pitched once a week at that time. But then towards the end of the year, he felt better in a more of a relief role and coming in and closing those games out.
Yeah.
And, so it was one of those situations where he was rolling and then he wanted to change. And I was like, okay, because I had Brock Tony and some other guys that could really do that. The front, Ben Sundell, big rangy lefty. So I was fine with that. But that's kind of how he wanted to finish it. And I was like, okay, whatever. But plus he started ticking up. That was one thing I noticed. He was starting to go faster, and I was like, oh, this is rare. All right, well, this is good. But no, he was used to that, so it didn't bother him. None of that stuff bothered him. And
I bet.
And it still doesn't bother him. When you watch him pitch, he's just throwing the pill, which is a lot of people, you put them on the mound.
Yeah.
They could be different mentally.
Right.
And physically, and you're not seeing that in the bullpens before. And you're like, oh boy, this is a new guy. And I just think there's really good pitchers like Gibbler and Wood and Milbrandt. They don't do that. They're past all that. They know their future is going to be probably beyond any of this, and so they're just preparing themselves for that.
Because you got all the scouts picking, you got people coming and watching, radar guns popping at you. I think that can be sometimes a distraction to pitchers, or do they just kind of push that aside? No,
it's a distraction for the whole team. Maybe not just them. It's just the kids are like, what the world?
Because they're used to seeing it because
Yeah.
they're already a guy or has that level of tension. So they're going to the scout days and, so they're used to seeing that around them. So yeah, I'm sure in the back of their mind, they do such a better job of masking it or controlling it. But when you have all your maybe sophomores and juniors and seniors first time seeing it on that large scale, I mean, we saw that Wednesday night against Staley, 2 top arms and staves, a great battle. And the next day I asked my kids, I went right down one. I go, all right, yesterday, big game Sierra. And they all told me, I go, and I would put them on the spot and smile and say, what was your biggest thing? And they all had something different. Wow, that was a lot of attention. Wow, the velocity. Wow, this. Yeah, that's good. They recognize that. And that's part of us growing too, and
being in that environment.
yeah,
Right.
I know what it is because that's championship baseball. I said, it'll be times 10 in about a month and a half, so, and, everything, every little microscopic thing it sets on the mat,
So you got to get unpuckered now, right?
Yeah, I mean, you do. I mean, that pressure to perform is really more amplified, especially when you're playing the Liberties and the Staleys and the Blue Springs. It is. I mean,
It gives you a little look at who can handle that pressure, though, too, doesn't it? Across the team. If you see, like your guy last year, it didn't seem to bother him.
Not at all.
But the rest of the guys, were there some guys that didn't handle it as well?
Last year's group?
Yeah.
Not at all. No, and I think when you had, and I've told you before, it was just a different group. None of them, it didn't bother any of them. And it was weird. Even, we got 2 guys back, our catchers back and Carson Bushman. It didn't bother them. I mean, and that was that. And I don't know if that was just, Cole, the way he went about. Cole was a leader. I mean, and he really matured going into his senior year. And, you and I've talked about that, but I think they saw him and none of that, the 6-hour rain delay didn't bother him.
Right.
I mean,
Well, and that was a disaster.
losing a 7-run lead didn't bother him. I mean, it was wild. But
That was something else.
yeah, Cole's like I said, he's just a different kid.
I felt bad for you guys having to burn those pitchers, too, like that.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah, because I thought Cole was, one of the better pitchers in the state, and he threw 2 innings.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it was tough. I think so, and this goes back to the original thought process. And I think you look back, it was American Legion. Even back in 2013, 15, even that, Legion was still more of the thought process. The clubs were coming in, they were there and whatnot. And then you go back to 2000 to maybe 2010, that was it. Well, I think a lot of these kids, as we're alluding to here, they're going to play at Lake Point.
Mm-hmm.
Just over here at Creekside. How many coaches are coming and watching? If you go to the future games, if you're picked for future games, a perfect game, you go up to Chicago. My goodness, how many scouts, how many coaches are looking at you and whatnot. These kids have been in that environment, and multiple kids have been in this environment where I don't think that was 20 years ago, right?
No.
I don't think it's so much of that environment. Those ones are still going to that, but then it's not so much the event itself. It's everything that falls out around that then they've got to, whether, I used to tell a lot of those blue chip guys, I said, you go out and, are you happy, how you ran, how you hit, yes. I said, that's all you can do. I said, not everybody here is going to like your performance or your arm action or the way you swing. I said, you're going to have to understand it. So okay, well, back in that day, not all of them are coming up and talking to you, but now it's all over the social media, and that makes it a little bit more of the mental part of it. You got to try and teach them then to block that stuff out, and it doesn't matter. It's just but I've seen that a little bit too.
Right.
You were talking about Bill Branton. We had Tyler Wood. I said the maturity level of him just this year already. He's been a 4-year guy. He's done the closing. He's done the starting. So he's just one strong bout back kid. He's a very good athlete. He's probably might be the fastest, not the second. He's top runs well. Outfield, one of our better hitters. So I mean, that's a rarity in his case. So he's a dual player. He's just not a PO. But yeah, seeing that.
Yeah, I saw he's hitting pretty well too.
Yeah, he swings it well. He swung it well last year too. So so he does a lot of good things for us, and he's just and he's a very, very smart kid too in the classroom. Just a good kid to have around. Yeah, very mature. He's learned a lot the last 3-4 years, so it's been good. Having him, and look forward to watching him throw every week. So
as much as we've been talking about the freshman side, those kids coming in probably not as ready for varsity. You have a pick or two here. But do you think they're a little ahead of the curve coming in over the last, say, 10 years? Or these kids, these freshmen, do they have a little more baseball IQ? Is the development process, are they a little more prepared to deal with high school baseball?
the 2 we have up to, they've handled, one of them catches,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of, our catcher coming back's dealing hamstring, some shoulder issues. So he's caught probably 5 or 6 games.
Yeah.
And he's handling it just fine. And I think he does play at a high level in the summer. He knows, again, you got to talk to him more.
Right.
If you go for 3, I don't care. You just have, to keep the game under control. But both the freshmen we have are doing a great job. Tanner Burt and Grant McClure. Tanner just pitches for us, but he's 6'5", but weighs about 155 pounds. I mean, he's skinny, but he throws it nice. But like I said, nothing right now is bothering him. And Graham's the same way. They're just, their IQ's good. They're just happy for the opportunity, and they haven't been down at all yet. Now we're 10 games in. I mean,
right.
We still got 24, 25 more to go to where, we got a stretch where it's, I think when we go to Lawrence, it's like 7 games in 5 days. And, how are you going to handle not 0 for 3, but 0 for 9, or 0 for 12 or whatever.
0 for 20.
Yeah.
Right.
But those two, the 2 for us, they've been really good so far for us.
And especially a young catcher. He goes 0 for 15, and now all of a sudden it's like, why can't I hit? And he's trying to catch, and, maybe I should hit that pitch, or so. And he's thinking about hitting all the time instead of doing the job behind the plate, right?
Yeah, and that's where, like I said, we have to talk to him a lot more, and like I said, he's been in it. His head's been in the game. I mean, he's doing a really good job. It's just, there's a lot more conversation, than we've had to have, with in the past.
Yeah. that's always, to me, one of the big things, because we don't see all these teams. You can't. I mean, and especially when we start looking, I always say I like to do rankings. They're fun. People like them, but they are what they are, because I haven't seen your team play. I'm going to get to see your team play tomorrow, and I get to see your team play tomorrow. That's what I got. All I can deal with is the fact of what I've seen kids do in the past that are coming back. Do you have that same catcher coming back from the year before? What's your middle look like? Do you have kids that have confidence in what they can do because they played that position for the last 2 years, and especially up the middle when you have kids that are strong? Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to play at a high level, in my opinion, if you don't have those pieces, those strong pieces, to filter out towards the rest of the group. So when you're looking, and that's why I say, people, you can't look at, especially rankings in the first couple weeks of high school baseball, because all those rankings are terribly, terribly subjective until you can lay eyes. I've gone and went and watched teams play just so I can say, is it legitimate? If I've got a team here, is that really legitimate? Can they play at that level? And then when you can see a team play and they're competing against a team that's, quality, these are 2 quality programs and things like that, you really don't know because of these variables. If you've got a kid that is catching, especially, and a freshman, I'm telling you, man, that's hard, because then you got the difference in velocity. If you've got kids that can throw hard, if you got a freshman catcher with 2 kids throwing 88, 90, maybe they've seen that in the summer, but the level of play, yeah, you may have that kid, but they're playing on a 15U squad rather than an 18U squad.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden these kids get hit. It's a much different ball game. And so I think those things become very difficult a lot of times when you start looking at teams across the state. And how do you know if you've got something? You don't know yet, do you?
No, not until you see them in the fire.
Yeah. And conference play is coming up, right? So how does that change the dynamic? Is all this preparing for conference, or is it just a matter of, I just want to see what I have?
Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I like to play these guys because I feel like that's where the best talent is, at the bigger schools. So even though I'm not in their conference, I love playing the higher level because I know that those are the kids that are we're going to see the best arms. We've seen nothing but great arms so far, which is great because I feel that's what's going to prepare us for the postseason anyway. So all this is done for postseason in my mind. There's nothing really that I do in the preseason that isn't a measuring stick for what we do when districts come around.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, it's all built towards that.
Do you guys think about conference, winning conference? Are those things important as much anymore as preparing for districts?
Every game's the biggest game, but honestly, I don't put the factor in because, like I said, it's a building. Like I said, I want to play. They're not a conference, but to me, they are conference. If you want to look at it like that.
Right. It's still KC Suburban, right?
Yeah,
but it's just different.
because
Yeah.
these are the guys we have to get past if we're fortunate to get to that level. It doesn't matter. Getting the nice thing this year, our conference changed. I get to see Staley twice prior to if I get in the situations in the year. So in the past, maybe I'd play him once. And a couple of years I wouldn't play him at all. And the only time I'd ever see him would be postseason if we were fortunate to see it. But seeing Blue Springs, seeing Blue South, all those other schools, and we try and play the toughest, and then you get to take schools like the Rock and various things that are in our districts and so on, make sure and play them. You got to get a better gauge on going in 35 game schedule. So, we want to play the toughest games possible.
And you definitely want to play the teams that are in your district, don't you, Coach?
Oh,
Yeah, and it's hard for us because we go to Mid-Missouri, so we'd have to go down and play Rockbridge.
You go to District 5, right?
Rockbridge, Battle's gone. Fort Sage came back in, so we are playing Fort, Grain Valley, South. We're gonna play Sedalia this year. We haven't played Sedalia in years, but they're in our district, and like conference would be nice.
Smith Cotton?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but then you got to throw in Rockbridge, you got to throw in Hickman,
Mm-hmm.
And that 8th team always changes. Is it Battle? Is it Waynesville? So now you're going even farther, to try to get that district opponent. So it's nice to win conference, but it's I care about district.
Right now,
A lot
yeah,
more.
especially, that makes more sense.
You can win your conference, doesn't matter if you don't win your district.
Right.
But I think most of the schedule or most of these conferences are built off of football. They're not built off of baseball. So what we have to do is we got to figure out. We don't get our district assignments until like after the schedule's already been made for 2 years.
Right.
So it's either you take out somebody and try to put them back in, but I would rather just play all district teams. I'd rather play each district team twice, and that way you go in your seating meeting and you already have an idea of what your vote can be. If we adopted the Kansas rule where just every game counts toward, they don't even meet. What's your record? Okay, great. Then you're number 3 seed. So, I would rather just if Misha would just let us find out who's in our district, and then we could schedule everybody in doubleheader. Then there wouldn't be as much arguments when you go into your district meeting because, if we lose the West and Blue Springs and all these people that are in I think the realm you should be playing in, but then somebody else has got like a 24 and whatever record, and they're playing such and such a school that, can barely field a team. They get a higher seed than you do. Maybe you get punished. So I would rather we just, somehow figure out who the district. Let's play the district.
Yeah, because when we get to like
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I remember it was March 21st.
I have a new
Right.
team in our district, and I was like, okay, they added one in.
Yeah.
It was Carthage.
And we're
Yeah, Carthage
I'm like,
came out
okay.
of there. Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
I was like, wow.
A few years ago, back in the day,
Right.
they stuck Willard in there with us one year back in 17 or 18. It was way
Right.
back, and then
That was when it was still just the 5A.
Was it?
Yeah, because the 6A didn't start till after the COVID year.
okay.
So and I think that to me is I love that point because that's something I look at too, because I think a lot of guys now, just looking at like the GAC out in St. Charles, they're all in one district.
Mhm.
So conference play, it means something because it's district play.
Yeah.
In that respect. The only one that kind of is an outlier is Francis Howell North, which goes to District 3 with CBC, Chaminade, or not Chaminade, but DeSmet, SLU. And Vianney was up in District 2 over there, which the MCC. So you have all these different things, but so how does Howell North, they're playing a conference schedule. They got to play SLU, CBC. They've got to play DeSmet. They got to play these teams to really kind of see what's going on. I agree with that. I think that because then how do you seed? How am I supposed to put Francis
It's an
Howell
argument.
Yeah.
into that thing? And I do. I think it creates the argument. And people go, well, why are they seed the 2 seed because their record's over here? And maybe they played in a bad conference.
And we've all been in those meetings with all
Yeah.
their experience. Where that one team comes in and, hey, I'm great, you had a good year, and they really kind of come in argumentative and they're like, okay. And then when it works out the way that,
Mhm.
right, and then when it works out the way it does, the results, it's karma. You're like, when
Yeah.
they get where they wanted and they're playing, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, and so it happens. We've all seen it. So.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's a valid point. And I've talked with, and I like Mr. Bradley, from who's the baseball executive, assistant or whatever that title is. I can't ever remember how to say it straight, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, look, if our districts were 2 out of 3 like they adopted for the quarters,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't think people would complain as much.
Agreed.
But if the district finals is not 2 out of 3, it's just a one shot. That's where you get into the arguments, because you got to try to get to that one shot with at least an arm that can get you there to win it.
Right.
But I mean, if it's 2 out of 3, then you probably wouldn't be like, okay, we just got to dance. Let's just go to the dance and see what we can do.
And this is where I think the subject matter that we're talking about, this goes right to it, because this is why I think pitching is always pitching and defense. That's the ball game in baseball, because you've got, if in Class 6, you've got to have probably now I like the 2 out of 3 for the quarters. I think it's a fantastic move. I would look forward to maybe a regional style, format in districts. I think it would be fantastic. I don't know if they'd do it or not.
Well, the excuse always was because of rain. Well, everybody has turf now, so that's not an issue.
Yes.
And there's colleges down the street. You could do that format and have a double
Yeah.
elimination. It's very easy to do in the time frame. It's been addressed. I don't think it's, we've all talked about it. I
Right.
think that'd be great.
And I think that those are the things, but when you start looking at this, if you don't have a pitching staff now, it don't matter if it's best 2 out of 3. You're still in trouble because you got to have multiple guys
Mhm.
that you can put on the mound. Yeah, okay, so your number 1 goes out there, but 2 and 3 have to be guys
Yeah.
that can
Even
pitch.
4 and 5.
Dude, yeah, 4, 5, and 6.
I mean,
Right.
I mean, you
there's
can.
those short guys that bounce back.
Yeah.
And,
And it's baseball. One day is different than the next. You don't want to. You play all these games, and it's almost like a funeral when you lose your last one because it's like, what?
Yeah.
We worked all the way up for that. It's like, well, I guess it's over.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's like, come on, it's baseball. Most baseball is played with, with depth.
Yes.
And I feel like if you just have one guy, you can pretty much just, ride it all the way out, which I don't know if that's fair or not, but
That's the way it used to be. When we played 15, 16, 17 games. And
yeah.
Yeah, you could ride one guy all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And even last year, in my opinion, before the 2 out of 3, I mean, you had a week between the district championship
Yeah.
and the quarterfinal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, my number 1 could throw here, and he's right back there. And then
Yeah.
the semifinal was a week later. So you put your big dog on the mound 3 out of the 4 games, and you just piece it. Once you get to the state championship, we'll figure it out from there, guys.
Yeah.
But you can get there if you've got that guy.
Mhm.
This is a whole different thing, and I think it would set up nicely like I said, with a district championship that was on a regional type format, because now you are, and I think Coach, you guys would enjoy more. Yes, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
we've talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
This is I think you had a proposal
Yeah,
once.
Oh yeah. It's been,
I mean, he's about how to do it.
Yeah.
I just talked to Wilson this week, and that topic came up. We were talking baseball, and that came back up.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, I mean, you look at Nebraska. Nebraska has a wild card system, so every win and loss counts. Like if a Class 4 team plays a Class 6 team, that's a certain amount of points more than a Class 6 team. If they lose to a Class 4 team, they lose points. So it's like a wild card system. So you go into your district with a certain amount of wild card points. You lose your district, but you have enough wild card points, then you advance to the next level or next round, no matter what, because your record and the opponents you're playing allows you to do that. I love that system.
I love that.
And so then like, of course, Texas, that's where most of this is built from, is having the
Sure.
2 out of 3s for the finals of each one of those different regions. And I mean, it just makes sense because this game's built off failure. It's built off of mistakes.
It's a tough game to be one and done.
We hate
Yeah.
that phrase. Yeah.
Yeah.
In football, you got 7 days to prepare for one?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there shouldn't be any excuses. You lose, that's it. Okay, go to the next week.
Right.
Where
Right.
we're just like, we're hoping the freshman shows up.
Yeah.
And, doesn't need
Yeah.
snack-
Back to back to back to back. Yeah.
doesn't need snacks and,
Yeah.
and all the
Juice boxes.
juice. when the senior drives, so it's just that's just, I don't know. I just think baseball, even in all the college ranks and pro ranks, is built off of those series type postseason.
I think 6A could be a great prototype for trying that.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
I mean,
And I think with what you're seeing, and this is why the conversation is interesting to me, when you start talking about the development process that is, and there's a lot of people, when I get into the conversation, club baseball, everybody goes, oh, it's horrible, oh, it's great, oh, it's horrible. There's pros and cons to everything. But one of the pros that I think that we've seen is just the availability of talent, and you have the high level kids, the elite kids are even that much better. You have the very good kids that are that much better. You have good kids that are that, and you have average players that are, because regardless, you got to have all of those kids to make a baseball team, because you have maybe 1 or 2 elite players. If you got 4 or 5 elite players on a baseball team, high school especially, you're going to win a state championship.
Yep.
we've seen those teams like
Right?
the team that sticks out to me was back the year Vianney when they were picked number one, I'm like, I played them great, and
Was that 18, right, or something?
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And man,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 18.
and that pitch, I was like, that is a good team. And that was one of the few times they said, oh, this is the state. I was like, that team's legit, and they were loaded and they were good. It's one thing that comes back to mind thinking of that stuff. But
Yeah, they're loaded again this year with those types of players, and they're in Class 5 now too.
Yeah.
They dropped down, so you won't see J.D. Dorman or those guys, which I think is going to be interesting at Class 5, because that's.
Then when you have schools like that, maybe there's a way of, because their history of it, bumping them up to,
That is.
They
it is.
were there is
If they win.
they went down because the championship points fell off this
Yeah,
year,
there's
so
points.
they went back down because they're enrollment wise, I think they're Class 4.
Yeah.
So they're playing still a class up from their enrollment rate, I believe.
Well,
Yeah.
darn.
So they've been Class 6 just because of the championship points. It's like St. Francis Borgia this year moved to Class 6. They're like a Class 3 or 4 enrollment school.
Okay.
So now you got to deal with it, which I think is tough. I don't know. I've never gotten into that, or I've had it people talk to me about why they do it, and I understand the thing, but the consequences of that sometimes is a little tough after
Oh yeah.
after everybody graduates
Right.
and leaves. And then you're like rebuilding. And Coach Struckhoff's like, yeah, we're working. He's in that same situation. Got a lot of young kids. Here's a Class 4 team playing in Class 6 with all these kids, and you talk about a tough gig.
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty fast, pretty quick.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult. But so when you're looking at that, I think that's the model at Class 6. I think you can, because I think the depth is much better. Now, it's not everybody, but I think for the most part, the depth is much better, even at especially at Class 6, because most of these kids are specialized. You're freshmen. Is he where he needs to be? No, but he's playing, and you can work with him,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's a difference maybe than 10 years ago. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he'll be. I mean, they're two good players.
Yeah.
As freshmen, they're holding their own, and they're only going to get better.
Right.
So it's good to see them now. Now the sad thing is I won't see them graduate, but they're going to be good. And like I said, it's fun watching them.
Right.
It really is.
Skill set and timing's everything in high school, coming into the right spot. So yeah, he's perfect timing.
Yeah.
Lost all their guys. Here comes a couple blue chip kids. Well, we know their skills, they're the right ones. Now just gotta nurse them along here.
The ebbs and flows, you guys see it every year. You have that, those classes that come in, you go, oh yeah, that one, it's going to be a couple of years. It's a couple of years away. Does that happen pretty much across the board for everybody? Or is there one program that just or is there a couple of programs just kind of stand out that it's just a constant?
Not mine. No.
It's the coaching.
Oh.
It's not.
Just that constant flow of talent that's coming through no matter what. I mean, do you see that?
I see 5 or 6 programs. Like I said, they're always going to have people to replace, and then
Sure.
Maybe every few years there's somebody that just jumps in there. But I mean, probably off the top of our head, we can think of 7 or 8 programs right around here that just they're going to be solid, or they're going to be really good. You just don't know, and we catch them on the wrong day or the right, and that's the same thing. It's all about catching everybody on the right day, wrong day in baseball, and then it's about being consistent. I mean, 30, 35 games, all of us are trying to max them out. So,
Right.
So,
Because since I've been, watching this, Staley's always been right there. That's one program that kind of just stands out. They just seem to have
Yeah. All their lower levels are good.
guys. Just,
There's lower level guys in that program that would play varsity for most.
is that right?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember watching the JV
That's-
last year.
That's what and that doesn't happen across the board, does it?
No, but they've always been like that, I think. And their district, with 5 high schools there, it just seems like majority of their baseball players are slanted towards that one school. Now that doesn't happen in basketball. All their basketball schools, I think, are like Oak Park and Northtown and Staley all have good basketball programs, but just seems like in baseball, it's just
Leans that way.
Yeah, and I think for us, we're pretty equal in our liberties. I mean,
But I think population's moving up that way too. I think the growth, like for us, we're landlocked. We can't go anywhere.
yeah, we are too.
Us, and when I got here in 97, even when we were in high school in the 80s, Blue Springs was a place to be.
Right, everything was coming this way.
And you've probably seen, that growth. I think the growth is shifting up north.
Yeah, there's.
I mean, because you're pretty much landlocked, aren't you?
Yeah, we need a reboundary or something.
Because Liberty North, they're not, are they? They getting there?
No, there's about could have about 6,000 students if they don't watch it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a 3,500 home approved deal right around there.
Yeah, there's all kinds of building going on.
So there's gonna have to be something going on. Yeah, but like Kearney's getting bigger.
Platte County.
Platte County's getting bigger with the new airport, and their boundary just keeps going.
It just keeps moving right up that.
It is,
border,
yeah.
Right? Was it 35 or whatever that is up that way?
Yeah, and I think there's still room to grow, like in Park Hill and some of the Smithville too. I mean, obviously they're getting some talent there.
I just think there's a lot of really good baseball in this area. So I'm gonna find. I want to ask you guys this, if you'll, allow me to. Who are your top teams in the state? What do you guys think? Who are the top teams in the state?
Two of them are sitting at this table.
Oh no,
Staley.
Sorry.
On this side.
Yeah.
I mean, and they won't say that, but
I agree with.
I agree. I mean, they'll
as
deny.
far as talent wise, I know, Coach, you're still kind of trying. You guys are both still trying to figure it out and whatnot. But talent wise, you
Staley.
guys have two of the better teams in the state.
That's humble.
Just my humble opinion.
They're very humble
I
people.
wouldn't put us in there.
Oh, stop.
Too late
No.
on it.
Oh my God.
And Coach, you probably don't know this because you don't look at rankings, and that's fine. But I think I have you at number 6 in the state right now. You've dropped a little.
Oh no, I appreciate the vote of confidence. We only had 2 guys, and
You don't believe it, does it?
Honestly, I don't look at any of that stuff.
No, he doesn't. It's just fodder for me, honestly.
That's
It's fun.
nice thing about Bragg is competing with you for so many years. It doesn't matter whatever thinks. I said he's gonna be set up to beat you. There's no better checkmate guy right
Stop it.
Plus, he breaks out this big binder,
here. Oh, I love
I
it.
do have a
and it's this flipping pages and pages and pages.
Guys,
Watched him for years. I mean, it's like
No.
it's like this thick.
It's no
I'm like,
secrets.
God dang, you got all
Come
this.
on.
we all know Bragg ball.
Exactly.
Oh.
I mean, Johnny comes up. Yeah, you got to move this way. I'm like, how do you know that? He's played one game.
I'll tell you what, though, because you guys are in District. Are you in District 8? You're
Is there
in
8
District
now? I
Yeah,
think we are in
there's
district.
8.
Yeah.
And you're in 7,
Yeah,
right?
we come out of ours.
And either one of those districts, in my opinion, my goodness, because I think Staley's in there with you guys
Liberty North.
and
Yeah.
Liberty North.
Well, the Park Hills are good.
Park Hill South.
Park-
is-
St. Joe's got a couple arms.
Yeah, Central. I've seen that.
Yeah, they got a 6'7" kid, sophomore, throws really well.
Who is?
Central.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
District will be interesting. It always is very.
Lee
There's a
Summit-
lot of them. Oh, Lee Summit's
Lee Summit's
solid.
been playing good
Lee Summit's
baseball.
solid. I mean, they had a good squad last year.
Yeah.
And you got the big fan of the Godfrey kid. I think he plays the game well. I like him.
Patterson.
Got the Patterson boy in the outfield, and then there's they got some decent outfield. So, but there's such an emotional level there just in Lee Summit, and you got Will over there at Rockhurst. And he's doing good things over there, and those kids. I've already played them twice, but they're already better the second time when we played them. Got a couple arms at Ray Peck. So
Yeah, they've had those kids there since they were fresh.
and
was it,
Truman's
Johnny
Truman is a good
Carl
squad. I mean,
kid,
they handed us a big L. That kid threw very well, and that group's been together since sophomore. And I said they maximize that, and I said I saw them in the Jamboree. So that's a good little squad. And
Because there's a couple teams that had surprised me, and Truman was one of them. Because I look at scores every day from all across the state. The other one is Neosho. The Wildcats. Neosho's played really good baseball.
Wow.
I don't know much about them other than the fact that they're like 9-1.
Wow.
And I think they're in District 1 or 2. It's on that side, because they're over there. But, Teams Truman was one that I didn't know anything about, popped up, but they're playing. They're not.
No, they got a couple good arms. Coach knows some of the boys because of his boy playing with them and stuff. So,
We got them in a week.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's not an easy team
No.
to beat.
no. So we're with our district in playoff times, it's just like you said. You have a little off, the ball rolls one way, feet and inches, percentages and numbers, and you come up one run short, you're done.
Right.
So it's
Is Glendale in your district?
no, not this year. No. Carthage was added. Everything else is the same.
Glendale's good.
Yeah. Glendale's
good.
Sebastian, whatever that kid's name is.
Sebastian.
Yeah, that kid's,
You got to see him
man.
last year.
He was at the Super 60 at the PBR event. And
I'm gonna check his birth certificate.
Yeah, he's big
that young
boy.
man
Physical
is
young
like
man.
220,
Yeah.
230.
Oh, he's a beast.
And
He's a beast.
he ran a 6'4", 60.
Holy moly.
I got to stand next to him.
Yeah, so did I.
Last year, I'm like, oh my. Last year, I
How
don't
does
imagine
the,
it looks now.
that's NFL type stuff.
That's
you
big
know?
time.
Yeah.
I mean, you ran a 6'4" and you're 220.
And we're back to that original thing, physicality.
Right.
The man childs, I guess. Sure, we used to use that
my
saying, but
gosh.
these guys are just physical. I mean, I look at Gibbler last year, how much I've got to watch him, and then just from his junior senior year, I mean, just the physique on him. Tyler Wood might get. I mean, he is.
Yeah, he's a big yeah.
Tate
I hit him on
Meyer
the
was
shoulder
like
the
that.
other day, and it was just like a raw. I mean, he's just solid. These kids are just So
And that's what I mean. You look across the landscape, and then I see Staley again. I mean, they haven't lost yet, which I think is. I was like, wow, that's pretty. I've seen the Earl Beck kid pitch, and I really like him. We talked with Brody a little bit. We got a chance to do a player spotlight with him, and we talked to. I like Jackson Aiken. Nice young man. We did a player spotlight with Jackson, and
a 3-year
enjoyed
guy
that
for him.
conversation.
He's a really, really, really good.
He's one of those kids that, because this is like, we talk about physicality. Last year, we were making our rounds, and we were here in Kansas City over at Inside Edge, and they're the U.S. Nationals now and whatnot. And we saw Drew Dickerson, and we talked to him, whatnot, and I'm listening to this bat. I'm like, who is that kid? And Drew looks at me and goes, oh, that's Jackson. I was like, oh, that's him.
Your reaction is what I saw when he was a freshman. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it was the same thing in Cage too. And I've told him this story. He's a real humble kid. I heard crack, crack, and I was on the other side. I'm like, this is Travis. He's a freshman, tall skin. I'm like, oh, and
Yes.
and that's how it started. And then that next year, so it's. But you were talking about those guys. They stick out.
Yeah, they do. And there's a lot of those guys across the landscape from the Southwest. You got, Nixa down there I think is
They lost one guy last year.
one guy. And I think Wyatt Vincent, and then Cloud at shortstop. My goodness, that's going to be a very difficult team to beat coming up out of the Southwest there. So I think that's the thing, the landscape of Missouri baseball in the future. I know you guys, been around doing it. You probably, I know you're had your retirement here. You thinking about retirement, guys?
I'll never retire.
Stop.
I just want to coach with this guy. If we ever get the chance to know.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. I still love it. 27 years in it. I enjoy it. I mean,
Very good.
so so it's a lot of fun. The fact you get high school and you don't get to pick your team, it's public school.
You get what you get,
You
right?
get what you get.
Through the sophomores, and you got hitting the ground, and you've got 85 to plus kids coming out there from all things, and then you're trying to, play chess and checkmate every game, and then like I said, try a different approach and players, and so.
It is a chess game with all those different kids
It is.
every year. I know, right? Unless you get very few times where you get that freshman that's like, oh, wow, I've seen him since, and that's what it felt like with Liberty North, that run they had. I was like, are these kids going to graduate?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're with me on that one.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was ready for them to go. I was like, that's enough.
What a good trip.
Get out of here.
Coach Steele says, well,
Yeah.
been nice
Yeah.
knowing y'all.
See you later.
It doesn't,
You're the smartest one of all of us.
Yeah.
doesn't get any better than that 4-year run. It doesn't.
No.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
It really was.
That was a pretty cool group. Nice kids too. I got to know them. Being standing over third.
I wasn't a fan of it.
We're still a fan of you though.
I wonder why, Coach.
I guess you had gone.
Gentlemen, thanks very much. I appreciate you guys. Again, Coach, I know we pulled you into this one again.
Yeah, it's fine.
I appreciate it very much.
We're gonna go get
Thank
some
you.
ice cream.
Yeah. Got practice.
So do I.
He's got to go
Ice cream.
back to little school and whatnot, but thank you.
A
Coach, it's
pleasure.
a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, you bet.
Coach.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. You bet.
Yeah,
you bet,
you
pal.
bet.
We'll be here tomorrow. We're looking forward to the ball game. Yeah, make sure we'll be out to. This is going to be out to this evening, so we'll be out here tomorrow. Make sure you tune in. We got a dandy between these two. Lee Summit West, the Titans.
Yes.
Do you ever show them the movie Remember the Titans? Is that like an
No.
inspiring film?
But it's a great movie.
It is a good movie, but no,
I'm more of a Sandlot kind of guy,
because it is football, right?
Right. But it's still a good movie. Still.
It is a good movie. Out here tomorrow, so make sure you tune in. 4 o'clock first pitch. We got a pregame show starting at 3:30. We'll get you all set up for the game. We'll see you then. Till then, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day in the Lord. All you pitchers, throw a strike, right? Throw a strike.
Ball Street, take a left on the lead.
There you go. Hitters, it's simple. Hit them where they aim. We'll see y'all next time.